Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, California Weather Watch. Today is January 13th, and I thought I would do a quick update on just what the Santa Ana winds are. A lot of times during my daily briefings, I don't get a lot of time to go into detail on this because there's so much to cover. So I wanted to go ahead and give a general overview on what the Santa Ana winds are, where they originate from, and you'll probably have a better understanding after you watch this video. Hopefully that is my goal anyway. But you can see they typically happen from September to May. And it's generally actually a cool season wind. It's when colder air tends to get down over the Great Basin. Colder air is denser, and colder air is also very, very dry. It's one of the defining characteristics of Arctic air, which does move down over some of the Great Basin at times. So if we take a look here and pretend like this blue terrain here is the Great Basin, high pressure, very cold, and again, very dry. And when you start to move that down the slopes, you compress it, you warm it out, and you dry it out as it moves towards Southern California, which of course is very close to sea level, and you're at thousands of feet elevation here across the Great Basin. So there's a lot of compression, there's a lot of warming of this very cold, dry air mass, and it warms up quite a bit as it reaches the coastline. Now, something interesting we had going on with the last event was we also had downslope winds. So we had rotor clouds and mountain waves crashing down towards the surface and causing very strong erratic winds, which of course shut down a lot of the firefighting capabilities of the aircrafts. Typically, Santa Ana wind events are gap winds, though, and they kind of move through the terrain like shown on the yellow arrow here. So there's a little bit of a difference between the event we went through, 5-6 days ago versus what we are going through right now. More of a typical Santa Ana wind event where they're moving through the gaps, but that is affecting some different areas as well. Now, you can imagine the Great Basin right here. Well, you don't have to imagine it. You can just look at this map, right? And again, high pressure, cold, dense, dry air. And of course, that wants to flow out towards the coastal regions here, especially when you get cut off loads off our coastline. And I've drawn this because sometimes they butt up against the Sierra Nevada and then they move down around south and then out towards the coastal areas. The deserts can get very windy as well. Some strong north winds, which tend to be crosswinds for the interstate. It's out there. But again, sea level out there, very high terrain across the Great Basin, a lot of compression, a lot of warming. As they move out to the coastal areas, very dry air emerges across Southern California for extreme fire danger. Now you can see the temperature at 5,000 feet here. And again, the very cold air, it's one of the characteristics of the Santa Ana wind event. As this cold air gets over the Great Basin, it starts to flow out towards the coastline. Now, that cold air, of course, is of higher pressure, and you can see the higher pressure there. And these are isobars. Higher pressure wants to flow towards the lower pressure there, and so then you get that that northeast wind that flows out across the deserts and towards Southern California. And also, let me back up here one slide because I do want to show you something here. There was another Santa Ana wind event lurking out towards next weekend in the early portion of next week. But I just want to kind of give our silver lining here because as we go off, you can see we're going through Friday on January 17th. There we go on and through the 18th. And we do bring some offshore winds, but it's been backing off on the strength of this event. Thank goodness. But we'll continue to watch that as we go. But I did want to point that out. We may not be done with these offshore winds. Now, let's see what happens. This is where we are actually right about now. And again, you can see the very cold air across the Great Basin there. This is tonight. You can see the temperatures dropping off a bit here across Southern California, but watch what happens. And so you can imagine as this air is taking its path across the Great Basin, look at how much it warms up. I mean, you're increasing this by 30, 35 degrees. And there's no moisture for this air mass to pick up. So it becomes extremely dry as it gets out towards Southern California and just creates literally some of the world's worst fire conditions. Or if you're a fire, the best conditions you can imagine sometimes emerge across Southern California. And if I put this into motion at 2,500 feet, you can see how these winds flow through the terrain features and the peninsular range and the transverse range and across the desert areas there as well. So yeah. And this is going on through Wednesday here coming up. We've got some offshore winds all the way through Thursday before they finally start to relax here as we go on in through the day Thursday. But also showing you here the relative humidities. And just because you look here and you go, oh, that looks kind of moist. The relative humidities are fairly high. This is very cold air. You're at 33 degrees and 75% humidity. That air is not holding much water at all. And then again, like I mentioned, you compress it, and you warm it, you get it out towards the coastline, and you're talking about single digits in many cases for Southern California. Now, if you take a look at 2-meter dew point depression, so this is the difference between temperature and dew point. So if you bring these together, you start to condense things. You form clouds and you form fog and mist and all kinds of stuff there. So you can see pretty close there across some portions of northern Nevada. And you've got some depression there between the dew point and the temperature, but watch what happens. Like as we going through tomorrow, some of these areas, you've got a 60-degree difference between the actual temperature and the dew point, meaning the dew point is probably there in the single digits. Actually, we can check that here real quick as well. But yeah, you can see the dew point down into the single digits, some of the dry air flowing off the coastal areas as it moves out across Southern California. But yeah, anyway, hopefully this helps you understand a little bit more about where the Santa Ana winds originate, when they tend to happen, and a little bit better on the dynamics behind these systems here. And, and hopefully this is the worst of it, and we, trend away from the stronger offshore wind event as we go through next weekend. However, we don't have anything like what we were dealing with last week. So that's a thumbs up there. The worst is behind us as far as the weather is concerned, but still, I know there's ongoing fires out there right now. I know there was a couple more that broke out today, but should not be as bad as what we dealt with the last round on January 7th with an absolutely perfect setup firestorm. Yeah. So anyway, hopefully you guys find this video useful. I'll go ahead and post this now. I'll do my normal briefing tomorrow, and we'll check out all the latest, and I will talk to you guys then.